This time around, a terrifying trio.
Hey everybody! Not sure who's here right now, but if you wanted to pop in chat and just let me know who's hanging out. Oh, Mimi's joining in. Oh, so it's the first entrance of that phrase, K-Trisha. Oh no. What a disgusting thing to say, right? Ugh. No, and like, I mean, let's not be too gross, but I do have IBS, so I know how she feels, but oh gosh. It's very descriptive. Yes, no, that phrase. Yeah, I did buy her a new lamb. Mimi is obsessed with these lamb chop toys, and I decided to buy her a new one, which means that one has a squeaker in it. I'm so smart. She particularly doesn't like when I talk to the computer, so it always adds an extra layer of fun for anybody who has to listen to me. So just hang here for a minute and just give people some time to filter in. I'm gonna once again say, not super... like, my memory isn't super good about what happened at the end of last time. I'm mainly still focused on that terrible, like, fairy dying scene, because that's just awful. That, and then the scene where they were at the Starlight River or whatever that was, which should have been sexy but just turned into a trauma dump. Yes, exactly. Sexy swimming and then talking about trauma. I mean, so disappointing. Yes, and then Lucian gave her a knife, so yes, that was also very important. And then I can see just from, like, taking a quick peek at the first line here that the paint stuff she'd requested has arrived, so I guess we're gonna find out more about her art skills. Or lack thereof, who knows yet? I mean, she did paint stuff in the cottage, so she could actually be quite good. We'll find out. Oh, and yeah, while we're waiting here, let's change our chapter information, something I should have done before we started. We're down to a nice even base 1030. Yeah, sexy ends up going, in my experience, straight into the trauma talk. Yes. Yeah. Similar. Usually starts there, because if they can't handle that, they can't handle any of the rest. Mimi agrees. And then for those of you that weren't here last week, this is only the second week I'm trying out these, like, chill vibes in the background. I found it quite nice last time. Yeah, just let me know though if your opinion on it. I'd love to hear how people are feeling. Let me know about volume, because some of you know, some of you don't. Jeez Louise. I'm streaming off a Mac, which is not ideal for the streaming experience, and especially for volume control and control over my sound. That's the one thing that, like, otherwise it would be fine. But oh, are they? Oh, that's cute. Yeah, like, Mimosa's very quiet, like in terms of barking and yipping and all of that stuff, which is unusual for a Chihuahua and even for a Dachshund, which is her other half. But she just loves that squeaking. She squeaks all the time. That's how she gets her message across. That and the gentle groans of a Chiweenie. Chiweenies grumble and groan a lot. And this probably defeats the purpose of what I did also before we get started here, but I'm just noticing now in the camera. So I put these like patches on a couple of very like not noticeable or even a big deal zits at all. And they look extremely red in the camera now, so that's fun. What? Okay, I don't know. Something's going on with Nightbot. Nightbot! I'm still learning about all this stuff. Let's see if this one works. Yeah, that works. Cool. Okay, yeah, so yeah, reminder off the top. If anybody wants a tip, it's not required. It's just something that just makes me happy. You can do so at the link there. Something I've noticed about the little champagne glasses, when you restart it, it doesn't like refill, but sometimes all the stuff doesn't go back in the cup, so we may never get it to the top. Let's see if we can do it. I don't know. I'm also actually drinking a properly made drink for the first time while I've done this stream, because I haven't had a chance to go to the liquor store since I started this, really. So this, and I don't know if you can get this outside of like the Toronto, Canada area, but this is probably the best raspberry vodka soda I've had anywhere. I've tried a bunch of them, and this is probably the best one. It's from Ace Hill. It's really good. But yeah, all my other drinks have just been like sad attempts at mixed drinks that I've made at home. I may work in a bar, but I'm not very good at making drinks. There's a reason I don't work behind the bar. Let other people do that for me. Alright, yeah, so I mean, a lot of people aren't here just yet, but I do feel like getting started, and that's okay. They can sort of drop in and ask questions and stuff as we go if they're wondering what's up. Mainly I'm just like, just at a loss for stuff to talk about. Like, my life's been very uneventful the last few days, really. Not much to share. Just been doing my day job, which isn't that always exciting. Oh, I will share this little thing. I'm gonna try to keep it all very like surface so I don't reveal too much and like get me in trouble. Oh no. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Queen, that's very nice of you. But yeah. I had to start my week off with a very unfortunate phone call. First thing happens Monday morning and this is always perfect for work, right? Like, oh my god, work stuff. But I get a call from these cleaners that I'd organized for like to come in and clean up a condo that our company maintains. And basically they told me that they refused to do it because like sometime back several months ago, somebody on their team found it gross and therefore nobody will go now. And so that turned into a day of me having to actually go to this condo and like look at it and figure out whether or not it was so gross that they couldn't clean it. And obviously nothing was wrong, because why would anything be wrong? It was It was a great start to my Monday, a great start to my week, and so then things have just continued on from there. So I'm excited to be here with all of you and just relax and read some fun stories and hang out. Oh, and also my partner used the microphone recently, and so it's not quite in the right spot for me, but I can't get it to adjust right. So this is just how it is. Okay, let's get started. Chapter 19. The next morning, my paint and supplies arrived from wherever Tamlin or the servants had dug them up. But before Tamlin let me see them, he brought me down hall after hall until we were in a wing of the house I'd never been to, even in my nocturnal exploring. I knew where we were going without his having to say. The marble floors shone so brightly that they had to have been freshly mopped, and that rose-scented breeze floated in through the open windows. All this, he'd done this for me. As if I would have cared about cobwebs or dust. When he paused before a set of wooden doors, the slight smile he gave me was enough to make me blurt, "Why do anything of this kind?" The smile faltered. "It's been a long time since there was anyone here who Why do you always jump and hit the microphone? Why do you do this? Why do you do this? I'm just starting. You don't have to do this off the top. You don't have to do this right off the top. Especially not if you're not even going to say hi to everybody. Just rude. You're just rude. It's been a long time since there was anyone here who appreciated these things. I like seeing them used again. Especially when there was such blood and death in every other part of his life. He opened the gallery doors, and the breath was knocked from me. The pale wooden floors gleamed in the clean, bright light pouring in from the windows. The room was empty, save for a few large chairs and benches for viewing I barely registered moving into the long gallery, one hand absent-mindedly wrapping around my throat as I looked up at the paintings. So many, so different, yet all arranged to flow together seamlessly. Such different views and snippets and angles of the world. Pastorals, portraits, still lifes. Each story had an experience. Each a voice shouting or whispering or singing about what that moment, that feeling had been like. Each a cry into the void of time that they had been here, had existed. Some had been painted through eyes like mine, artists who saw in colors and shapes I understood. Some showcased colors I had not considered. These had a bend to the world that told me a different set of eyes had painted them. A portal into the mind of a creature so unlike me, and yet I looked at its work and understood and felt and cared. I never knew, Tamlin said from behind me, that humans were capable of... He trailed off as I turned, the hand I'd put on my throat sliding down to my chest, where my heart roared with a fierce sort of joy and grief and overwhelming humility. Humility before the magnificent art. He stood by the doors, head cocked in that animalistic way, the words still lost on his tongue. I wiped at my damp cheeks. It's perfect, wonderful, beyond my wildest imaginings didn't cover it. I kept my hand over my heart. Thank you, I said. It was all I could find to show him what these paintings, to be allowed into this room, meant. Come here whenever you want. I smiled at him, hardly able to contain the brightness in my heart. His returning smile was tentative but shining, and then he left me to admire the gallery at my own leisure. I stayed for hours, stayed until I was drunk on the art, until I was dizzy with hunger and wandered out to find food. After lunch, Alice showed me to an empty room on the first floor with a table full of canvases of various sizes, brushes whose wooden handles gleamed in the perfect clear light, and paints, so many paints, beyond the 4 basic ones I'd hoped for. The breath was knocked from me again. And when Alice had gone and the room was quiet and waiting and utterly mine, then I began to paint. Weeks passed, the days melting together. I painted and painted, most of it awful and useless. I never let anyone see it, no matter how much Tamlin prodded and Lucian smirked at my paint-splattered clothes. I never felt satisfied that my work matched the images burning in my mind. Often, I painted from dawn until dusk, sometimes in that room, sometimes out in the garden. Occasionally, I'd take a break to explore the spring lands, and Tamlin as my guide. With Tamlin as my guide. Coming back with fresh ideas that had me leaping out of bed the next morning to sketch and scribble down the scenes or colors as I'd glimpsed them. But there were the days when Tamlin was called away to face the latest threat to his borders. And even painting couldn't distract me until he returned, covered in blood that wasn't his own, sometimes in his beast form, sometimes as the High Lord. He never gave me details, and I didn't presume to ask about them. His safe return was enough. Around the manor itself, there was no sign of creatures like the Naga or the bog, but I stayed well away from the western woods, even though I painted them often enough from memory. And though my dreams continued to be plagued by the deaths I'd witnessed, the deaths I'd caused, and that horrible, pale woman ripping me to shreds, all watched over by a shadow I could never quite glimpse, I slowly stopped being so afraid. Stay with the High Lord. You will be safe. So I did. The Spring Court was a land of rolling green hills and lush forests and clear, bottomless lakes. Magic didn't just abound in the bumps and the hollows, it grew there. Try as I might to paint it, I could never capture it, the feel of it. So sometimes I dared to paint the High Lord, who rode at my side when we wandered his grounds on lazy days. The High Lord whom I was happy to talk to or spend hours in comfortable silence with. It was probably the lulling of magic that clouded my thoughts, and I didn't think of my family until I passed the outer hedge wall one morning, scouting for a new spot to paint. A breeze from the south ruffled my hair, fresh and warm. Spring was now dawning on the mortal world. My family, glamored, cared for, safe, still had no idea where I was. The mortal world, it had moved on without me, as if I had never existed. A whisper of a miserable life, gone, unremembered by anyone whom I'd known or cared for. I didn't paint, nor did I go riding with Tamlin that day. Instead, I sat before a blank canvas, no colors at all in my mind. No one would remember me back home. I was as good as dead to them. And Tamlin had let me forget them. Maybe the paints had even been a distraction. A way to get me to stop complaining, to stop being a pain in his ass about wanting to see my family. Or maybe they were a distraction from whatever was happening with the Blight and Prithian. I'd stopped asking, just as the Suriel had ordered, like a stupid, useless, obedient human. It was an effort of stubborn will to make it through dinner. Tamlin and Lucian noticed my mood and kept conversation between themselves. It didn't do much for my growing rage, and when I had eaten my fill, I stalked into the moonlit garden and lost myself in its labyrinth of hedges and flower beds. I didn't care where I was going. After a while, I paused in the rose garden. The moonlight stained the red petals a deep purple and cast a silvery sheen on the white blooms. My father had this garden planted for my mother. Oh, that was Tamlin, sorry. My father had this garden planted for my mother, Tamlin said from behind me. I didn't bother to face him. I dug my nails into my palms as he stopped by my side. It was a mating present. Ew! I don't like that word. I don't know why. Ugh. I know. It doesn't... Whatever. I stared at the flowers without seeing anything. The flowers I'd painted on the table at home were probably crumbling or gone by now. Nesta might have even scraped them off. My nails pricked the skin of my palms. Tamlin providing for them or no, glamoring their memories or no, I'd been erased from their lives. Forgotten. I'd let him erase me. He'd offered me paints and the space and time to practice. He'd shown me pools of starlight. He'd saved my life like some kind of feral knight in a legend, and I'd gulped it down like fairy wine. I was no better than those zealot children of the blessed. His mask was bronze in the darkness, and the emeralds glittered. You seem upset. I stalked to the nearest rose bush and ripped off a rose, my fingers tearing on the thorns. I ignored the pain, the warmth of the blood that trickled down. I could never paint it accurately, never render it the way those artists had in the gallery pieces. I would never be able to paint Elaine's little garden outside the cottage the way I remembered it, even if my family didn't remember me. He didn't reprimand me for taking one of his parents' roses. Parents who were as absent as my own, but who had probably loved each other and loved him better than mine cared for me. A family that would have offered to go in his place if someone had come to steal him away. My fingers stung and ached, but I still held on to the rose as I said, I don't know why I feel so tremendously ashamed of myself for leaving them. Why it feels so selfish and horrible to paint. I shouldn't feel that way, should I? I know I shouldn't, but I can't help it. The rose hung limply from my fingers. All those years, what I did for them, and they didn't try to stop you from taking me. There it was, the giant pain that cracked me in two if I thought about it too long. I don't know why I expected them to, why I believed that the Puka's illusion was real that night. I don't know why I bother still thinking about it, or still caring. He was silent long enough that I added, compared to you, to your borders and magic being weakened, I suppose my self-pity is absurd. If it grieves you, he said, the words caressing my bones, then I don't think it's absurd at all. Why? A flat question, and I chucked the rose into the bushes. He took my hands, his calloused fingers strong and sturdy, were gentle as he lifted my bleeding hand to his mouth and kissed my palm. Is he like licking up her blood? Ew. As if that were answer enough. Also, he's kissing her palms. Oh, is that cute? I don't know if that's cute. I can't fully decipher how I feel about this yet. Give me a second. Oh. This could get spicy, guys. His lips were smooth against my skin, his breath warm, and my knees buckled as he lifted my other hand to his mouth and kissed it, too. Kissed it carefully, in a way that made heat begin pounding in my core, between my legs. Oh, yikes. Yikes on bikes. I'm letting my small town show. I'm not cursing. I'm just saying like weird folksy things. Sometimes I still drop into that. A lot more than I probably wish I did. When he withdrew, this is gross. When he withdrew, my blood shone on his mouth. I glanced at my hands, which he still held, and found the wounds gone. I looked at his face again, at his gilded mask, the tanness of his skin, the red of his blood-covered lips as he murmured, "Don't feel bad for one moment about doing what brings you joy." He stepped closer, releasing one of my hands to tuck the rose I'd plucked behind my ear. I didn't know how I had gotten into his hand, or where the thorns had gone. I don't know. Come take, because that's kind of sexy. Yeah, he did literally kiss it better. It's kind of sexy, but also it's kind of like all the blood stuff is. And I like vampire stuff. We've been over this. I love vampire stuff, but it doesn't seem vampiric. It seems yucky. But that's me. That's me. But also, like, he's being so sweet, and he's basically being like, feel your feelings, and that's always nice. When somebody's like, feel your emotions and have healthy coping mechanisms, I'm like, oh. Do you go to therapy too? Thank you. I love this. Also, he magicked away thorns. That's cool. I couldn't stop myself from pushing. Why do any of this? He leaned in closer, so close that I had to tip my head back to see him. Because your human joy fascinates me. The way you experience things, in your lifespan, so wildly and deeply and all at once, is entrancing. I'm drawn to it, even when I know I shouldn't be, even when I try not to be. Because I was human, and I would grow old, and I didn't let myself get that far as he came closer still. Slowly, as if giving me time to pull away, he brushed his lips against my cheek. Soft and warm and heartbreakingly gentle. It was hardly more than a caress before he straightened. I hadn't moved from the moment his mouth had met my skin. One day there will be answers for everything, he said, releasing my hand and stepping away. But not until the time is right, until it's safe. In the dark, his tone was enough to know that his eyes were flecked with bitterness. He left me, and I took a gasping breath, not realizing I'd been holding it. Not realizing that I craved his warmth, his nearness, until he was gone. Oh. Once again, this is one of the things that I like a lot about reading this digitally, is that that last line there is underlined to show that a lot of people like to highlight that one. They're just like, I like that. Lingering mortification over what I'd admitted, what had changed between us, had me skulking out of the manor after breakfast, fleeing for the sanctuary of the woods for some fresh air, and to study the light and colors. I brought my bow and arrows, along with the jeweled hunting knife that Lucian had given me. Better to be armed than caught empty-handed. I crept through the trees and brushed for no more than an hour before I felt a presence behind me, coming even closer, sending the animals running for cover. I smiled to myself, and 20 minutes later I settled in the crook of a towering elm and waited. Brush rustled, hardly more than a breeze's passing, but I knew what to expect, knew the signs. A snap and roar of fury echoed across the land, scattering the birds. When I climbed out of the tree and walked into the little clearing, I merely crossed my arms and looked up at the High Lord, dangling from his legs from the snare I'd laid. Oh. Even upside down, he smiled lazily at me as I approached. Cruel human. That's what you get for stalking someone. He chuckled, and I came close enough to dare stroke a finger along the silken golden hair dangling just above my face, admiring the many colors within it, the hues of yellow and brown and wheat. My heart thundered, and I know he could probably hear it. But he leaned his head toward me, a silent invitation, and I ran my fingers through his hair, gently, carefully. He purred, the sound rumbling through my fingers, arms, legs, and core. I wonder how that sound would feel if he were fully pressed up against me, skin to skin. I stepped back. Oh boy. Oh no. Aw, he does like being pet. Ugh. He curled upward in a smooth, powerful motion and swiped with a single claw. Yes, core is romance novel speak for vagina. He curled upward in a smooth, powerful motion and swiped with a single claw at the creeping vine I'd used for rope. I took a breath to shout, but he flipped as he fell, landing smoothly on his feet. It would be impossible for me to ever forget what he was and what he was capable of. He took a step closer to me, the laughter still dancing on his face. Feeling better today? I mumbled some non-committal response. Good, he said, either ignoring or hiding his amusement. But just in case, I wanted to give you this, he added, pulling some papers from his tunic and extending them to me. I bit the inside of my cheek as I stared down at the 3 pieces of paper. It was a series of 5-lined poems. There were 5 of them altogether, and I began sweating at words I didn't recognize. It would take me an entire day just to figure out what these words meant. Before you bolt or start yelling, he said, coming around to peer over my shoulder. If I dared, I could have leaned back into his chest. His breath warmed my neck, the shell of my ear. He cleared his throat and read the first poem. Oh god, guys, it's a limerick. Or at least I think so. There once was a lady most beautiful, spirited if a little unusual. Her friends were few, but how the men did queue, but to all she gave a refusal. That's, I don't know if that was quite a poem, sir. Like, he wrote that, I think. The implication is that he wrote it, I think. Oh, it's a poem about how she's not like the other girls. She's not like the other girls. Not like the other limericks. Ah, he's doing a thing. Okay. Oh no. I have been warned now. Katricia says just wait. Oh no. Ooh. My brows rose so high I thought they'd touch my hairline, and I turned, blinking at him, our breath mingling as he finished the poem with a smile. Without waiting for my response, Tamlin took the papers and stepped a pace away to read the second poem, which wasn't nearly as polite as the first. By the time he read the third poem, my face was burning. Oh no. Tamlin paused before he read the fourth, then handed me back the papers. Final word in the second and fourth line of each poem, he said, jerking his chin toward the papers in my hands. Unusual, Q. I looked at the second poem. Slaying. Conflagration. These are, I stared. The list of words was too interesting to pass up, and not good for love poems at all. When I lifted my brow in silent inquiry, he said, We had contests to see who could write the dirtiest limericks while I was living with my father's warband by the border. I don't particularly enjoy losing, so I took it upon myself to become good at them. Oh. I didn't know how he'd remembered that long list I'd compiled. I didn't want to. Sensing I wasn't about to draw an arrow and shoot him, Tamlin took the papers and read the fifth poem, The dirtiest and foulest of them all. We're not getting the poems? Like, I want to read them. Put them in the book. Like, come on. When he finished, I tipped back my head and howled, my laughter like sunshine, shattering age-hardened ice. Yes, like if you're gonna say, these limericks, they're so dirty, you should have heard them. They were so dirty. It's like, you're a book. Put them in the book. Just robbing us. I was still smiling when we walked out of the park and toward the rolling hills, meandering back to the manor. You said, that night in the rose garden. I sucked in my teeth for a moment. You said that your father had it planted for your parents upon their mating, not wedding? High fae mostly marry, he said, his golden skin flushing a bit. But if they're blessed, they'll find their mate, their equal, their match in every way. High fae wed without the mating bond, but if you find your mate, the bond is so deep that marriage is insignificant in comparison. I didn't have the nerve to ask if fairies ever had mating bonds with humans. Okay, so Kadri says this is what I was talking about on Sunday, the mating bond. Yes, okay. I'm understanding it now. Yep. I didn't have the nerve to ask if fairies ever had mating bonds with humans, but instead dared to say, where are your parents? What happened to them? A muscle feathered in his jaw, and I regretted the question, if only for the pain that flickered in his eyes. My father. His claws gleamed at his knuckles, but didn't go out any further. I definitely asked the wrong question. My father was as bad as Lucian's. Worse. My 2 older brothers were just like him. They kept slaves, all of them. And my brothers, I was young when the treaty was forged, but I still remember what my brothers used to do. He trailed off. It left a mark. Enough of a mark that when I saw you, your house, I wouldn't let myself be like them. Wouldn't bring harm to your family, or you, or subject you to fairy whims. Slaves. There had been slaves here. I didn't want to know. Had never looked for traces of them, even 500 years later. I was still little better than chattel to most of his people, his world. That was why he'd offered the loophole, why he'd offered me the freedom to live wherever I wished in Prithian. Thank you, I said. He shrugged, as if that would dismiss his kindness, the weight of the guilt that still bore down on him. What about your mother? Tamlin loosed a breath. My mother, she loved my father deeply. Too deeply, but they were mated, and even if she saw what a tyrant he was, she wouldn't say an ill word against him. I never expected, never wanted my father's title. My brothers would have never let me live to adolescence if they had suspected that I did. So the moment I was old enough, I joined my father's war band and trained so that I might someday serve my father, or whichever of my brothers inherited his title. He flexed his hands, as if imagining the claws beneath. I'd realized from an early age that fighting and killing were about the only things I was good at. I doubt that, I said. He gave me a wry smile. Oh, I can play a mean fiddle, but High Lord's sons don't become traveling minstrels. So I trained and fought for my father against whomever he told me to fight, and I would have been happy to leave the scheming to my brothers. But my power kept growing, and I couldn't hide it. Not among our kind. He shook his head. Fortunately or unfortunately, they were all killed by the High Lord of an enemy court. I was spared for whatever reason, or called and granted luck. My mother I mourned. The others? A too tight shrug. My brothers would not have tried to save me from a fate like yours. I looked up at him. Such a brutal, harsh world, with families killing each other for power, for revenge, for spite and control. Perhaps his generosity, his kindness, was a reaction to that. Perhaps he'd seen me and found it to be like gazing into a mirror of sorts. I'm sorry about your mother, I said, and it was all I could offer. All he'd once been able to offer me. He gave me a small smile. So that's how you became High Lord. Most High Lords are trained from birth in manners and laws and court warfare. When the title fell to me, it was a rough transition. Many of my father's courtiers defected to other courts rather than have a warrior beast snarling at them. A half-wild beast, Nesta had once called me. It was an effort to not take his hand, to not reach out to him and tell him that I understood. But I just said, then they're idiots. You've kept these lands protected from the blight, when it seems like others haven't fared so well. They're idiots, I said again. But darkness flickered in Tamlin's eyes, and his shoulders seemed to curve inwards ever so slightly. Before I could ask about it, we cleared the little wood, a spread of hills and knolls laid out ahead. In the distance, there were masked fairies atop many of them, building what seemed to be unlit fires. What are those? I asked, halting. They're setting up bonfires. For Kalin Mai, it's in 2 days. For what? Fire Night? I shook my head. We don't celebrate holidays in the human realm. Not after your people left. In some places, it's forbidden. We don't even remember the names of your gods. What does Kala Fire Night celebrate? He rubbed his neck. It's just a spring ceremony. We light bonfires, and the magic that we create helps regenerate the land for the year ahead. How do you create the magic? There's a ritual, but it's very fairy. That rhymes. I know, that's dumb. I'm sorry. The first thing that popped into my brain was like a flavor or something. That's very fairy. Eyebrows. Oh, okay. He clenched his jaw and continued walking away from the unlit fires. You might see more fairies around than usual. Fairies from this court and from other territories who are free to wander across the borders at that night. I thought the blight had scared many of them away. It has, but there will be a number of them. Just stay away from them all. You'll be safe in the house, but if you run into one before we light the fires at sundown in 2 days, ignore them. And I'm not invited to your ceremony? No, you're not. He clenched and loosened his fingers, again and again, as if trying to keep the claws contained. Though I tried to ignore it, my chest caved a bit. We walked back in the sort of tense silence we hadn't endured in weeks. Tamlin went rigid the moment we entered the gardens. Not from me or our awkward conversation. It was quiet, with that horrible stillness that usually meant one of the nastier fairies was around. Tamlin bared his teeth in a low snarl. Stay hidden, and no matter what you overhear, don't come out. Then he was gone. Alone, I looked to either side of the gravel path, like some gawking idiot. If there was indeed something here, I'd be caught in the open. Perhaps it was shameful not to go to his aid, but he was a high lord. I would just get in the way. I had just ducked behind a hedge when I heard Tamlin and Lucian approaching. I silently swore and froze. Maybe I could sneak across the field to the stables. If there was something amiss, the stables not only had shelter, but also a horse for me to flee on. I was about to make for the high grasses, mere steps beyond the edge of the gardens, when Tamlin's snarl ripped through the air on the other side of the hedge. I turned, just enough to spy them through the dense leaves. "Stay hidden," he'd said. "If I moved now, I would surely be noticed." "I know what day it is," Tamlin said, but not to Lucian. Rather, the two of them faced nothing. Someone who wasn't there. Someone invisible. I would have thought they were playing a prank on me had I not heard a low, disembodied voice reply. "Your continued behavior is garnering a lot of interest at court," the voice said, deep and sibilant. See, that's not at all the voice I did, is it? I don't know. Guess we'll find out. I'll have to find that voice. I shivered, despite the warmth of the day. "She has begun wondering why you haven't given up yet, and why a poor Naga wound up dead not too long ago." "Tamlin's not like the other fools," Lucian snapped, his shoulders pushing back to raise himself to his full height. More warrior-like than I'd yet seen him. No wonder he had all those weapons in his room. "If she expected bowed heads, then she's more of an idiot than I thought." The voice hissed, and my blood went cold at the noise. "Speak you so ill of she who holds your fate in her hands? With one word she could destroy this pathetic estate. She wasn't pleased when she heard of your dispatching your warriors." The voice now seemed turned toward Tamlin. "But as nothing has come of it, she has chosen to ignore it." There was a deep-throated growl from the High Lord, but his words were calm as he said, "Tell her I'm getting sick of cleaning up the trash she dumps on my borders." The voice chuckled, the sound like sand shifting. "She sets them loose as gifts, and reminders of what will happen if she catches you trying to break the terms of—" "He's not," Lucian snarled. "Now get out! We have enough of your ilk swarming on the borders. We don't need you defiling our home, too. For that matter, stay the hell out of the cave. It's not some common road for filth like you to travel through, and it's not some common road for filth like you to travel through as they please." Tamlin loosed a growl of agreement. The invisible thing laughed again, such a horrible, vicious sound. "Though you have a heart of stone, Tamlin," it said, and Tamlin went rigid. "You certainly keep a host of fear inside it." The voice sank into a croon. "Don't worry, High Lord." It spat the title like a joke. "All will be right as rain soon enough." "Burn in hell," Lucian replied for Tamlin, and the thing laughed again before a flap of leathery wings boomed. A foul wind bit my face, and everything went silent. They breathed deeply for another moment. I closed my eyes, needing a steadying breath as well, but massive hands clamped on onto my shoulders. But massive hands clamped onto my shoulders, and I yelped. "It's gone," Tamlin said, releasing me. It was all I could do not to sag against the hedges. "What did you hear?" Lucian demanded, coming around the corner and crossing his arms. I shifted my gaze to Tamlin's face, but found it to be so white with anger at that thing, that I had to look again at Lucian. Nothing I understood, I said, and meant it. None of it made any sense. I couldn't stop shaking. Something about that voice had ripped away the warmth from me. What was that? Tamlin began pacing, the gravel churning beneath his boots. "There are certain fairies in Prithian who inspired the legends that you humans are so afraid of. Some, like that one, are myth-given flesh." Inside that hissing voice, I'd heard the screaming of human victims, pleading of young maidens whose chests had been split open on sacrificial altars, mentions of court, seemingly different from Tamlin's own, Was that she, the one who had killed Tamlin's parents? A high lady, perhaps, in lieu of a lord. Considering how ruthless the High Fae were to their families, they had to be nightmarish to their enemies. And if there was to be warring between the courts, if the blight had left Tamlin already weakened... If the Attar saw her, Lucian said, glancing around. It didn't, Tamlin said. Are you certain it didn't? Tamlin growled over his shoulder, then looked at me, his face still pale with fury, lips tight. I'll see you at dinner. Understanding a dismissal, and craving the locked door of my bedroom, I trudged back to the house, contemplating who this she was to make Tamlin and Lucian so nervous, and to command that thing as her messenger. The spring breeze whispered that I didn't want to know. All right, and that's chapter 19. I keep waking up Siri. God damn it. That was a good chapter. Some spooky, leathery winged creature that I made sound like a stupid ghost was there saying threatening things. So yeah, we're gonna go on to chapter 20. It's definitely short, so we might even get chapter 21 done, depending on how long that one is. Chapter 20. All right, so we're making pretty good headway. Like, if the numbers mean much, we're like not too far from halfway yet. I actually think while I'm here, I'm going to switch the music just a little bit. Because that one's just feeling a little... I don't know. Here, I don't know what this is. Let's do this. No. I think it may be broken. Computer's doing computer things, guys, I swear. Why they gotta be like that? Let's try this. Is it interesting just listening to me be frustrated? Probably not at all. Well, look, this one is just called reading, so let's try this. Yeah, the comment about the stupid ghost. Every time that I do a voice like that or hear somebody do a voice like that, all I can think of, and I hope this isn't like too weird theater kitty for you guys, but in college, the first time that we, like as a class, we did a read through of Death of a Salesman, which is such a like theater person play. Right? Like everybody has to read it or do it at some point. We were just doing a read through. We weren't like doing it for real. But you also had a lot of people in this particular theater course that like had not encountered this work, either seen it or heard it or anything before. One of those people being being my partner, who I love very much. But he chose to do this voice for one of the characters. I don't remember where he got the stage direction that made him want to do this, but he just sounded like a big balloon man. So every line that he read sounded like this, like a sloth that was gonna float away into the sky. And it was just so ridiculous that like we couldn't get through any of the scenes with that guy in it, because it was like, why are you doing it like that? But it was a choice. Sometimes you just gotta make a strong choice. Just slow talking Charlie or whatever. It's terrible. Okay. Oh, is it? This might be. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so this is the Fire Festival, so maybe I will change this to do something kind of like spicy. Let's see what we can get here. Because I do want something kind of instrumental so it doesn't distract anyone, but here, let's do a search. Let's do whatever this is called. This is called Beatstrumentals. They're very sleepy beats. Incorrect beats. Wrong beats. No, not derailing at all, Katrusha. We haven't started yet, so it's important. It's important we get the right vibes. Well, this could turn into maybe. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, let's just leave this. Let's just let it be whatever this is and let it do its thing. And if we find that it's just like so not the vibe, we'll adjust. Because vibe is important, and this is better than when I was just reading this silent, in my opinion. It's just warmer. I've also started lighting candles when I do this just to fill the space in. I've got these empty jars here that like I want to fill with stuff so that I don't just have empty jars on my desk and create a space. Not just for this, like for my life, but also for this. Because I spend like 90% of my time in this chair, so. Okay. So, on to chapter 20. Yes, just full of glitter. Like I'm fully thinking of doing like a glitter sparkle interpretation of a terrarium in there, like in one of those like sealed ones that are like kind of spooky and witchy, but like very glittery also, so that it goes with what like my vibe is, right? Like that's why like I've got skulls, but it's like a pink sparkly skull, right? Like that's what I do. In fact, here, I was looking for something to clip my hair back. Oh, I got a whole board behind my desk of crap. Oh, it's not working. Haha, there we go. These are supposed to be for Halloween, but they are for all the time. There. I got some skeleton hands. I've also got a tiara back there. I've got all kinds of stuff hanging out on my board that I wish I could show you, but this is not a movable camera. It's just the computer camera. This dog stinks. I don't want to kick you out, but you stink. You stink. She says she's sorry. Alright, chapter 20. After a tense dinner during which Tamlin hardly spoke to Lucian or me, I lit all the candles in my room to chase away the shadows. I didn't go outside the following day, and when I sat down to paint, what emerged on my canvas was a tall, skeletally thin gray creature with bat ears and giant membranous wings. Its snout was open in a roar, revealing row after row of fangs as it leaped into flight. As I painted it, I could have sworn that I could smell breath that reeked of carrion, that the air beneath its wings whispered promises of death. The finished product was chilling enough that I had to set aside the painting in the back of the room and go try to persuade Alice to let me help with the fire night food preparations in the kitchen. Anything to avoid going into the garden, where the Ator might appear. The day of fire night, Callan Mai, Tamlin had called it, dawned, and I didn't see Tamlin or Lucian all day. As the afternoon shifted into dusk, I found myself again at the main crossroads of the house. None of the bird-faced servants were to be found. The kitchen was empty of staff, and the food they'd been preparing for 2 days. The sound of drums issued. The drum beats came from far away, beyond the garden, past the game park, into the forest that lay beyond. They were deep probing. A single beat echoed by 2 responding calls. Summoning. I stood by the doors to the garden, staring out over the property as the sky became awash in hues of orange and red. In the distance, upon the sloping hills that led into the woods, a few fires flickered, plumes of dark smoke marring the ruby sky. The unlit bonfires I'd spotted 2 days ago. Not invited, I reminded myself. Not invited to whatever party had all the kitchen fairies tittering and laughing among one another. The drums turned faster, louder. Though I'd grown accustomed to the smell of magic, my nose pricked with the rising tang of metal, stronger than I'd yet sensed it. I took a step forward, then halted on the threshold. I should go back in. Behind me, the setting sun stained the black and white tiles of the hall floor, a shimmering shade of tangerine, and my long shadow seemed to pulse to the beat of the drums. Even the garden, usually buzzing with the orchestra of its denizens, had quieted to hear the drums. There was a string, a string tied to my gut that pulled me toward those hills, commanding me to go, to hear the fairy drums. I might have done just that Tamlin had... How do I read this? Oh my god, my brain is spasming. I'm just so excited. I might have done just that had Tamlin not appeared from down the hall. No wonder I'm excited. He was shirtless, with only the baldric across his muscled chest. The pommel of his sword glinted golden in the dying sunlight, and the feathered tops of arrows were stained red as they poked above his broad shoulder. I stared at him, and he watched me back, the warrior incarnate. Oh, damn! Where are you going? I managed to get out. It's Cal and Mai, he said flatly. I have to go. He jerked his chin to the fires and drums. To do what? I asked, glancing at the bow in his hand. My heart echoed the drums outside, building into a wilder beat. Yes, oh my. Oh. His green eyes were shadowed beneath the gilded mask. As a High Lord, I have to partake in the great rite. Oh, what's that? What's that? What's the great... Go to your chamber, he snarled, and glanced toward the fires. Lock your doors. Set up a snare, whatever you do. Why? I demanded. I agree. Why? The Atter's voice snaked through my memory. Tamlin had said something about a very fairy ritual. What the hell was it? From the weapons, it had to be brutal and violent, especially if Tamlin's beast form wasn't weapon enough. I don't know about that. Just do it. His canines began to lengthen. My heart leaped into a gallop. Don't come out until morning. Why? Why? Stronger, faster, the drums beat, and the muscles in Tamlin's neck quivered, as if standing still were somehow painful to him. Are you going into battle? I whispered, and he let out a breathy laugh. I've clearly decoded this before she has. Absolutely, it's like an orgy. Everybody's fucking. That's what's happening. Like, have we not? Of course. Of course that's what it is. The fact that she hasn't gathered that blows my mind. He lifted a hand as if to touch my arm, but he lowered it before his fingers could graze the fabric of my tunic. Stay in your chamber, Feyre. But please. Before I could ask him to reconsider bringing me along, he took off running. The muscles in his back shifted as he leaped down the short flights of stairs and bounded into the garden. As spry and swift as a stag. Within seconds, he was gone. I usually only hear the word spry ascribed to elderly people who are not totally decrepit. But I guess it can be used other ways. I did as he commanded, though I soon realized that I'd locked myself in my room without having eaten dinner. And with the incessant drumming and dozens of bonfires that popped up along the far hills, I couldn't stop pacing up and down my room, gazing out towards the fires burning in the distance. Stay in your chamber. But a wild, wicked voice weaving in between the drum beats whispered otherwise. Go, the voice said, tugging at me. Go see. Oh, she's a looky-loo. What's wrong with me? Oh my god. By 10 o'clock, I could no longer stand it. I followed the drums. The stables were empty, but Tamlin had taught me how to ride bareback these past few weeks, and my white mare was soon trotting along. I didn't need to guide her. She, too, followed the lure of the drums and ascended the first of the foothills. Smoke and magic hung thick in the air. Concealed in my hooded cloak, I gaped as I approached the first giant bonfire atop the hill. There were hundreds of high fae milling about, but I couldn't discern any of their features beyond the various masks they wore. Where had they come from? Where did they live? If they belonged to the Spring Court, but did not dwell in the manor. When I tried to focus on a specific feature of their faces, it became a blur of color. They were more solid than I viewed them from the side of my vision. They were more solid when I viewed them from the side of my vision. But if I turned to face them, I was met with shadows and swirling colors. It was magic, some kind of glamour put on me, meant to prevent my viewing them properly, just as my family had been glamored. Yes, where did they come from? Where did they go? Did you know that song is about an STD? I forget which one, but it's about an STD. Yeah. It's about pus on a dick, which is disgusting, and I'm so sorry to bring it up, but I can't help but think about it. Oh my god. Okay, total like off topic, but vaguely related to this Cotton Eye Joe bullshit. So, we're watching and Everything is Terrible. Yes, it is the STD of songs as well. We're watching an Everything is Terrible or something like that video that was teaching kids how to square dance, and there was a whole one that was just called the Cotton Eye Joe, and I died. Because knowing that fact and then teaching it to children, I couldn't help it. I was roaring. Partner was like, "Are you okay?" It was magic, some kind of glamour put on me, meant to prevent my viewing them properly, just as my family had been glamored. I would have been furious, would have considered going back to the manor had the drums not echoed through my bones and that wild voice not beckoned to me. I dismounted my mare, but kept close to her as I made my way through the crowd, my telltale human features hidden in the shadows of my hood. I prayed that the smoke and countless scents of various high fae and fairies were enough to cover my human smell, but I checked to ensure that my 2 knives were still at my sides anyway as I moved deeper into the celebration. Though a cluster of drummers played on one side of the fire, the fairies flocked to a trench between 2 nearby hills. I left my horse tied to a solitary sycamore crowning a knoll, and followed them, savoring the pulsing beat of the drums as it resonated through the earth and into the soles of my feet. No one looked twice in my direction. I almost slid down the steep bank as I entered the hollow. At one end, a cave mouth opened into a soft hillside. Its exterior had been adorned with flowers and branches and leaves, and I could make out the beginnings of a pelt-covered floor just past the cave mouth. Okay, so what else are we doing here then? Okay, where was my spot? I got very distracted there. What lay inside was hidden from view as the chamber veered away from the entrance, but firelight danced upon the walls. Whatever was occurring inside the cave, or whatever was about to happen, was the focus of the shadowy fairies as they lined either side of a long path leading to it. The path wended between the trenches along the hills, and the high fae swayed in place, moving to the rhythm of the drumming, whose beats sounded in my stomach. Guys, like, it's just, they're gonna hit you over the head with it. My god. I watched them sway, then shifted on my feet. I'd been banned from this? I scanned the firelit area, trying to peer through the veil of night and smoke. I found nothing of interest, and none of the masked fairies paid me any heed. They remained along the path, more and more of them coming each minute. Something was definitely going to happen. Whatever this great rite was. I made my way back up the hillside and stood along the edge of a bonfire near the trees, watching the fairies. I was about to work up the courage to ask a lesser fairy who passed by, a bird-masked servant like Alice, what sort of ritual was going to happen, when someone grasped my arm and whirled me around. I blinked at the 3 strangers, dumbfounded as I beheld their sharp-featured faces, free of masks. They looked like high fae, but there was something slightly different about them. Something taller and leaner than Tamlin or Lucian. Something crueler in their pitch-black, depthless eyes. Fairies, then. The one grasping my arm smiled down at me, revealing slightly pointed teeth. "Human woman," he murmured, running an eye over me. "We've not seen one of you for a while." I tried yanking my arm back, but he held my elbow firm. "What do you want?" I demanded. "What do you want? What do you want?" I'm just like, I'm all a tizzy right now, and I've been drinking, and I don't know anymore, guys. Whew. What do you want? I demanded, keeping my voice steady and cold. The two fairies who flanked him smiled at me, and one grabbed my other arm, just as I went for my knife. Just some Fire Night fun, one of them said, reaching out a pale, too long hand to brush back a lock of my hair. I twisted my head away and tried to step out of his touch, but he held firm. None of the fairies near the bonfire reacted. No one bothered to look. Okay, I think this is probably one of the trigger warning points, so there may be some assault happening here. Let's all just be prepared. If I cried for help, would someone answer? Would Tamlin answer? I couldn't be that lucky again. I'd probably used up my allotted portion of luck with the Naga. I yanked my arms in earnest. Their grip tightened until it hurt, and they kept my hands well away from my knives. The three of them stepped closer, sealing me off from the others. I glanced around, looking for an ally. There were more non-masked fairies here now. The three fairies chuckled, a low hissing noise that ran along my body. I hadn't realized how far I stood from everyone else, how close I'd come to the forest's edge. "Leave me alone," I said, louder and angrier than I'd expected, given the shaking that was starting in my knees. "Bold statement from a human on Calvin Mai," said the one holding my left arm. The fires didn't reflect in his eyes. It was as if they gobbled up the light. I thought of the Naga, whose horrible exteriors matched their rotten hearts. Somehow, these beautiful ethereal fairies were far worse. "Once the rite's performed, we'll have some fun, won't we? A treat, such a treat, to find a human woman here." I bared my teeth at him. "Get your hands off me," I said, loud enough for anyone to hear. One of them ran a hand down my side, its bony fingers digging into my ribs, my hips. I jerked back only to slam into the third one, who wove his long fingers through my hair and pressed close. No one looked. No one noticed. "Stop it," I said, but the words came out in a strangled gasp as they began herding me toward the line of trees, toward the darkness. I pushed and thrashed against them. They only hissed. One of them shoved me and I staggered, falling out of their grasp. The ground welled up beneath me, and I reached for my knives, but sturdy hands grasped me under the shoulders before I could draw them or hit the grass. They were strong hands, warm and broad, not at all like the prodding, bony fingers of the three fairies who went utterly still as whoever caught me gently set me upright. "Here we go." "There you are. I've been looking for you," said a deep, sensual male voice I'd never heard. "Oh, new guy! New guy! New guy! Oh, oh boy! Sorry. Yay!" A deep, sensual male voice. Oh no, I don't know if I can do that, guys. We'll just have to, I'm gonna try, and we'll have to work on that. Ooh. Okay. But I kept my eyes on the three fairies, bracing myself for flight as the male behind me stepped to my side and slipped a casual arm around my shoulders. Three lesser fairies paled, their dark eyes wide. "Thank you for finding her for me," my savior said to them, smooth and polished. "Enjoy the rite." Thank you, Katricia. You let us know when, things really need to be looked out for, because I'm gonna try to, preempt it, but, I'm trying to read this cold, so. There was enough of a bite beneath his last words that the fairies stiffened. Without further comment, they scuttled back to the bonfires. I stepped out of the shelter of my savior's arm and turned to thank him. Standing before me was the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. And that's chapter 20! Ah! Who's this person? Oh. Okay, we got time for one more. We can do more of this. Yes, let's continue. Let's continue. I refuse to be cliffhangered. Okay. Chapter 21. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We're just getting right into who this person is. Okay. Everything about the stranger radiated sensual grace and ease. High fae, no doubt. His short black hair gleamed like a raven's feathers, offsetting his pale skin and blue eyes so deep they were violet, even in the firelight. They twinkled with amusement as he beheld me. I'm gonna have to fix you, Nightbot. God damn it, stop being stupid. Apologize. For a moment, we said nothing. Thank you didn't seem to cover what he'd done for me, but something about the way he stood with absolute stillness, the night seeming to press in closer around him, made me hesitate to speak, made me want to run in the other direction. He, too, wasn't wearing a mask. From another court, then. A half smile played on his lips. What's a mortal woman doing here on Fire Night? His voice was a lover's purr that sent shivers through me, caressing every muscle and bone and nerve. I can't do this sexy man's voice! Ah! I'm a silly lady. I do silly lady voice. Ah! I took a step back. My friends brought me. Girl. The drumming was increasing in tempo, building to a climax I didn't understand. It had been so long since I'd seen a bare face that looked even vaguely human. His clothes, all black, all finely made, were cut close enough to his body that I could see how magnificent he was, as if he'd been molded from the night itself. Oh, this is the sexy goth daddy! Woo! Once again, what's wrong with me? And who are your friends? He was still smiling at me, a predator sizing up prey. Two ladies. I lied again. Two ladies. Cabaret, anybody else? No? Okay. Their names? He prowled closer, slipping his hands into his pockets. I retreated a little more and kept my mouth shut. Had I just traded 3 monsters for something far worse? I don't know, cause he's pretty sexy and that's alright. No! Katrusha, I am so sorry. I don't know what this Nightbot is doing, but it just timed you out and it should not have done that. I don't want it to do that to you. I am so sorry. You have not angered me, Katrusha. It's simply the Nightbot. I enjoy this. I enjoy what you are doing. I'm so sorry. That's what I get. That's what I get for trying to do things and build a channel. But yeah, this guy I would still take over the bony fingered awful guys. Even if he's gonna do the same thing, at least there's only one of him. But we shouldn't be talking about what's the better option to be assaulted by, because that's terrible. Well, once I turn it off, you can spam all the emotes you want, because there's just 2 of ya. Okay. When it became apparent I wouldn't answer, he chuckled. "You're welcome," he said, "for saving you." I bristled at his arrogance, but retreated another step. I was close enough to the bonfire, to that little hollow where the fairies were all gathered, that I could make it if I sprinted. I've given myself hiccups. Okay. Maybe someone would take pity on me. Maybe Lucian or Alice were there. Strange for a mortal Strange for a mortal to be friends with two fairies, he mused, and began circling me. I could have sworn tendrils of star-kissed night trailed in his wake. Aren't humans usually terrified of us? And aren't you, for that matter, supposed to keep to your side of the wall? I was terrified of him, but I wasn't about to let him know. I've known them my whole life. I've never had anything to fear from them. He paused his circling. He now stood between me and the bonfire, and my escape route. And yet they brought you to the Great Rite and abandoned you. They went to get refreshments, I said, and his smile grew. Whatever I'd just said had given me away. I'd spotted the servants hauling off the food, but maybe it wasn't here. He smiled for a heartbeat longer. I had never seen anyone so handsome. I never had so many warning bells pealed in my head because of it. I'm afraid the refreshments are a long way off, he said, coming closer now. It might be a while before they return. May I escort you somewhere in the meantime? He removed a hand from his pocket to offer his arm. He'd been able to scare off those fairies without lifting a finger. No, I said, my tongue thick and heavy. He waved his hand toward the hollow, toward the drums. Enjoy the rite then. Try to stay out of trouble. His eyes gleamed in a way that suggested staying out of trouble meant staying far, far away from him. Though it might have been the biggest risk I'd ever taken, I blurted, "So you're not a part of the spring court?" He returned to me, every movement exquisite and laced with lethal power, but I held my ground as he gave me a lazy smile. Do I look like I'm part of the spring court? The words were tinged with an arrogance that only an immortal could achieve. He laughed under his breath. No, I'm not a part of the noble spring court. You're glad of it. He gestured to his face, where a mask might go. I should have walked away. Should have shut my mouth. Why are you here then? Why are you here then? I'm doing the... Damn it! I'm doing the man's voice. Why are you here then? The man's remarkable eyes seemed to glow, with enough of a deadly edge that I backed up a step. Because all the monsters have been let out of their cages tonight, no matter what court they belong to, so I may roam wherever I wish until the dawn. More riddles and questions to be answered, but I'd had enough, especially as his smile turned cold and cruel. Enjoy the rite, I repeated as blandly as I could. I hurried back to the hollow, too aware of the fact that I was putting my back to him. I was grateful to lose myself in the crowd, milling along the path to the cave, still waiting for some moment to occur. When I stopped shaking, I looked around at the gathered fairies. Most of them still wore masks, but there were some, like the lethal stranger and those 3 horrible fairies, who wore no masks at all, either fairies with no allegiance or members of other courts. I couldn't tell them apart. As I scanned the crowd, my eyes met with those of a masked fairy across the path. One was russet and shone as brightly as his red hair. The other was metal. I blinked at the same moment he did, and then his eyes went wide. He vanished into nothing, and a second later, someone grabbed my elbow and yanked me out of the crowd. "Have you lost your senses?" Lucian shouted above the drums. His face was ghostly pale. "What are you doing here?" None of the fairies noticed us. They were all staring intensely down the path, away from the cave. I wanted to. I started, but Lucian cursed violently. "Idiot!" he yelled at me, then glanced behind him toward where the other fairies stared. "Useless human fool!" Without further word, he slung me over his shoulder as if I were a sack of potatoes. Despite my wriggling and shouts of protest, despite my demands that he get my horse, he held firm, and when I looked up, I found that he was running, fast. Faster than anything should be able to move. It made me so nauseated that I shut my eyes. He didn't stop until the air was cooler and calmer, and the drumming was distant. Lucian dropped me on the floor of the manor hallway, and when I steadied myself, I found his face just as pale as before. "You stupid mortal," he snapped. "Didn't he tell you to stay in your room?" Lucian looked over his shoulder toward the hills, where the drumming became so loud and fast that it was like a rainstorm. That was hardly anything. That wasn't even the ceremony. It was only then that I saw the sweat on his face and the panic gleam in his eyes. "By the cauldron, if Tam found you there—" "So what?" I said, shouting as well. I hated feeling like a disobedient child. "It's the great rite, cauldron boil me. Didn't anyone tell you what it is?" My silence was answer enough. I could almost see the drum beats pulsing against his skin, beckoning him to rejoin the crowd. "Fire Night signals the official start of spring, in Prithian as well as in the mortal world," Lucian said. While his words were calm, they trembled slightly. I leaned against the wall of the hallway, forcing myself into a casualness I didn't feel. "Here, our crops depend upon the magic we generate on Callan Mai. Tonight." I stuffed my hands into the pockets of my pants. Tamlin had said something similar 2 days ago. Lucian shuddered as if shaking off an invisible touch. "We do this by conducting the great rite. Each of the 7 High Lords of Prithian performs this every year, since their magic comes from the earth and returns to it at the end. It's a give and take." "But what is it?" I asked, and he clicked his tongue. "Tonight, Tam will allow great and terrible magic to enter his body," Lucian said, staring at the distant fires. "The magic will seize control of his mind, his body, his soul, and turn him into the hunter. It will fill him with his sole purpose: to find the maiden. From their coupling, magic will be released and spread to the earth, where it will regenerate life for the year to come." Okay, so it's not like a full orgy, but it's like a weird sex thing. We weren't wrong. My face became hot, and I fought the urge to fidget. "Tonight, Tam won't be the fairy you know," Lucian said. "He won't even know his name. The magic will consume everything in him, but that one basic command and need." Who's the maiden?" I got out. Lucian snorted. "No one knows until it's time. After Tam hunts down the white stag and kills it for the sacrificial offering, he'll make his way to that sacred cave, where he'll find the path lined with fairy females waiting to be chosen as his mate for tonight." "What?" Lucian laughed. "Yes, all those female fairies around you were females for Tamlin to pick. It's an honor to be chosen, but it's his instincts that select her." "But you were there, and other male fairies." My face burned so hot that I began sweating. That was why those 3 horrible fairies had been there, and they thought that just by my presence, I was happy to comply with their plans. "Oh," Lucian chuckled. "Well, Tam's not the only one who gets to perform the rite tonight. Once he makes his choice, we're free to mingle. Though it's not the great rite, our own dalliances tonight will help the land too." Yeah, the Bachelor, Prithian. Oh, y'all, before we get back to this, so the episode of The Bachelor where I was a background extra did air the other night, and you see me for 1 frame. I am in the background for a single frame. My partner scanned, he found the 1 frame you can see me, pointed it out, and that was it. So technically I'm there. Technically I'm in the episode. Oh, see, another terrible Nightbot block. Okay. Anyway, where was he? He shrugged off that invisible hand a second time, and his eyes fell upon the hills. "You're lucky I found you when I did, though," he said, "because he would have smelled you and claimed you. But it wouldn't have been Tamlin who brought you into that cave." His eyes met mine, and a chill went over me. "And I don't think you would have liked it. Tonight is not for lovemaking." Ew. Nightbot, I hate you. For this moment, I hate you. I swallowed my nausea. Yo, what is this? Communist Russia? It won't allow anything. It just keeps shutting you two down. Not cool, man. Communism is with no comment. "I should go," Lucian said, gazing at the hills. "I need to return before he arrives at the cave. At least to try to control him when he smells you and can't find you in the crowd." Who? Who? And what? Who? Who what? Who what? Ah! It made me sick, the thought of Tamlin forcing me. Oh, but I thought he said it wasn't him. God damn it. Still don't like any of this. Don't like it. Don't like any of this. Thought of Tamlin forcing me, that magic could strip away any sense of self, of right or wrong. But hearing that some feral part of him wanted me, my breath was painful. Oh, I understand what he was saying now. Bull. God, I'm dumb. See, I'm very obtuse. And sometimes it takes a minute. I understand now. He's saying that his sexy animal brain wants her, and that when he's in sexy animal brain mode, it's not him. I understand. See, I'm not dumb. Am I? No. Okay. "Stay in your room tonight, Farah," Lucian said, walking to the garden doors. "No matter who comes knocking, keep the door locked. Don't come out until morning." At some point, I dozed off while sitting at my vanity. I awoke the moment the drum stopped. A shuddering silence went through the house, and the hair on my arms arose as magic swept past me, rippling outward. Though I tried not to, I thought about the probable source and blushed, even as my chest tightened. I glanced at the clock. It was past 2 a.m. Well, he'd certainly taken his time with the ritual, which meant the girl was probably beautiful and charming and appealed to his instincts. I wondered whether she was glad to be chosen. Probably. She'd come to the hill of her own free will. And after all, Tamlin was a high lord, and it was a great honor. And I suppose Tamlin was handsome. Terribly handsome. Even though I couldn't see the upper part of his face, his eyes were fine, and his mouth beautifully curved and full. And then there was his body, which was... I hissed and stood. I stared at my door, at the snare I'd rigged. How utterly absurd, as if bits of rope and wood could protect me from the demons in this land. Needing to do something with my hands, I carefully disassembled the snare. Then I unlocked the door and strode into the hallway. What a ridiculous holiday. Absurd. It was good that humans had cast them aside. I made it to the empty kitchen, gobbled down half a loaf of bread, an apple, and a lemon tart. I nibbled on a chocolate cookie as I walked to my little painting room. I needed to get some of the furious images out of my mind, even if I had to paint by candlelight. I was about to turn down the hallway when a tall male figure appeared before me. The moonlight from the open window turned his mask silver, and his golden hair, unbound and crowned with laurel leaves, gleamed. "Going somewhere?" Tamlin asked. His voice was not entirely of this world. I suppressed a shudder. Midnight snack, I said, and I was keenly aware of every movement, every breath I took as I neared him. Oh boy. His bare chest was painted with whorls of dark blue woad, and from the smudges in the paint, I knew exactly where he'd been touched. I tried not to notice that they descended past his muscled midriff. I was about to pass him when he grabbed me, so fast that I didn't see anything until he had me pinned against the wall. Jeez Louise! Oh boy! Yikes! Whew. The cookie dropped from my hand as he grasped my wrist. I smelled you, he breathed, his painted chest rising and falling so close to mine. I searched for you, and you weren't there. He reeked of magic. When I looked into his eyes, remnants of power flickered there. No kindness, none of the wry humor and gentle... yeah, not my cookie! No kindness, none of the wry humor and gentle reprimands. The Tamlin I knew was gone. Let go, I said as evenly as I could, but his claws punched out, embedding in the wood above my hand. Still riding the magic, he was half wild. Oh no! Oh no! Okay. You drove me mad, he growled, and the sound trembled down my neck, along my breasts until they ached. Ah! I searched for you, and you weren't there. When I didn't find you, he said, bringing his face closer to mine, until we shared breath. It made me pick another. I couldn't escape. I wasn't entirely sure that I wanted to. Ew. Ew. No. Oh God. Oh no, guys. I don't know. She asked me not to be gentle with her either, he snarled, his teeth bright in the moonlight. He brought his lips to my ear. I would have been gentle with you, though. I shuddered as I closed my eyes. Every inch of my body went taut as his words echoed through me. No! Oh no! Ah! It's getting so spicy! Oh my God! Okay. Center. I would have had you moaning my name throughout it all. And I would have taken a very, very long time, Farah. Oh no. He said my name like a caress, and his hot breath tickled my ear. My back arched slightly. He ripped his claws free from the wall, and my knees buckled as he let go. I grasped the wall to keep from sinking to the floor, to keep from grabbing him, to strike or caress, I didn't know. I opened my eyes. He still smiled like an animal. Oh no. Why should I want someone's leftovers? I said, making to push him away. He grabbed my hands again, and I bit and... Oh God! He grabbed my hands again and bit my neck! Damn! Oh no! Don't do that, sir! Don't do that, sir! No! See what I mean? There's vampire shit in this! How did I know? I knew there'd be vampire shit in this. He's not a vampire, but I knew there'd be vampire shit in this. There always is. I cried out as his teeth clamped on the tender spot where my neck met my shoulder. Oh, like cats? Like how cats do? Ugh. You don't want to have sex like cats do. That's not fun for anyone. That hurts. I couldn't move, couldn't think, and my world narrowed to the feeling of his lips and teeth against my skin. He didn't pierce my flesh, but rather bit to keep me pinned. The push of his body against mine, the hard and the soft, made me see red, see lightning, made me grind my hips against his. I should hate him for his stupid ritual, for the female he'd been with tonight. His bite lightened, and his tongue caressed the places his teeth had been. He didn't move. He just remained in that spot, kissing my neck. Intently, territorially, lazily. Sorry. Oh God. Ew. He pounded between my legs. Ew. And as he ground his body against me, against every aching spot, a moan slipped past my lips. He jerked away. The air was bitingly cold against my freed skin, and I panted as he stared at me. "Don't ever disobey me again," he said, his voice a deep purr that ricocheted through me, awakening everything and lulling into complicity. Then I reconsidered his words and straightened. He grinned at me in that wild way, and my hand connected with his face. "Don't tell me what to do," I breathed, my palm stinging, "and don't bite me like some enraged beast." He chuckled bitterly. The moonlight turned his eyes to the color of leaves and shadow. More. I wanted— oh God. More. I wanted the hardness of his body crushing against mine. I wanted his mouth and teeth and tongue on my bare skin. Oh God, on my breasts. Oh no, between my legs. Oh no. See what I mean? I'm reacting like this. It's not because I don't like it. It's just because it's a lot. I don't know how to— I don't know how to feel feelings. I don't know how to feel feelings. Everywhere. I wanted him everywhere. I was drowning in that need. This is almost as bad as the dying guy. Visceral stuff is difficult. His nostrils flared as he scented me. Scented me? Scented every burning, raging thought that was pounding through my body, my senses. The breath rushed from him in a mighty whoosh. He growled once, low and frustrated and vicious, before prowling away. You know, like, he could have made a choice to just not stop. I don't know. Like, because she was clearly not gonna stop. I don't know. It seemed fairly consenting. By the way, that's the end of chapter 21. Yeah. Woo. Yeah, but like, what if we kissed though? But like, wouldn't it be great if we like, but if we did? Damn. Damn. Okay, so we got a lot of spicy. We are at the 2-hour mark. But since it's just the two of you, can let me know. Do you want to keep reading? Or do you want to go? Yeah, like she's in the same place that I am as well. It's just like, am I into this? I think I'm into this. I don't know if I should feel this. Should I feel this feelings? I don't know. Let alone, look, my robe's coming down. Like, I'm just like, oh. Cool. Let's hang out for a little bit. It's only 9. Let's just see what happens for just a little bit longer. I'm not in a rush to end, and I'm just yeah. This one's only 20, so we'll do one more chapter. Do one more. We usually do 3, yeah. By the way, yes, Queen, I hope that your travels are going well. Okay. Compose. Do I have any alcohol left? Because I might need it. Chapter 22. I awoke when the sun was high after tossing and turning all night, empty and aching. Yes, take shaky sip. The servants were sleeping in after their night of celebrating, so I made myself a bath and took a good long soak. I don't think soaking is the answer, Farah. Try as I might to forget the feel of Tamlin's lips on my neck. I had an enormous bruise where he'd bitten me. Oh. Angry Hickey. After bathing, I dressed and sat at the vanity to braid my hair. I opened the drawers of the vanity, searching for a scarf or something to cover the bruise peeking over the collar of my blue tunic, but then paused and glared at myself in the mirror. He'd acted like a brute and a savage, and if he'd come to his senses by the morning, then seeing what he'd done would be minimal punishment. I know, right? Like, she can't get laid. You take her away, there was only one guy there who'd bang her anyway. And he was getting married soon, wasn't he? Or something? Anyway. Can someone be assigned to this girl as a dick? Okay. Sniffing, I opened the collar of my tunic further and tucked stray strands of my golden brown hair between my ears so there would be no concealing it. I was beyond cowering. Oh, she's like, she went from like, I should hide this, to no, I'm like double proud. Humming to myself and swinging my hands, I strode downstairs and followed my nose to the dining room, where I knew lunch was usually served for Tamlin and Lucian. When I flung open the doors, I found them both sprawled in their chairs. I could have sworn that Lucian was sleeping upright, fork in hand. Good afternoon, I said cheerfully, with an especially saccharine smile for the High Lord. He blinked at me, and both of the ferrymen murmured their greetings as I took a seat across from Lucian, not my usual place facing Tamlin. I drank deeply from my goblet of water before piling food on my plate. I savored the tense silence as I consumed the meal before me. You look refreshed, Lucian observed with a glance at Tamlin. I shrugged. Sleep well. Like a babe, I smiled at him and took another bite of food and felt Lucian's eyes travel inexorably to my neck. Lucian. What is that bruise? Lucian demanded. I pointed with my fork to Tamlin. Ask him, he did it. Just tell on the man. Just tell on him. Lucian looked from Tamlin to me and then back again. Why does Feyre have a bruise on her neck from you? He asked with no small amount of amusement. I bit her, Tamlin said, not pausing as he cut his steak. We ran into each other in the hall after the rite. I straightened in my chair. She seemed to have a death wish, he went on, cutting his meat. The claws stayed retracted but pushed against the skin above his knuckles. My throat closed up. Oh. He was mad, furious at my foolishness for leaving my room, but somehow managed to keep his anger on a tight leash. So if Feyre can't be bothered to listen to orders, then I can't be held accountable for the consequences. accountable, I sputtered, placing my hands flat on the table. You cornered me in the hall like a wolf with a rabbit. Lucian propped an arm on the table and covered his mouth with his hand, his russet eye bright. Well, I might not have been myself. Lucian and I both told you to stay in your room, Tamlin said, so calmly that I wanted to rip out my hair. Yeah, I've been thinking Wolverine claws for a couple of chapters here. I couldn't help it. Didn't even try to fight the red-hot temper that raised my senses. Fairy pig, I yelled, and Lucian howled, almost tipping back in his chair. At the sight of Tamlin's growing smile, I left. It took me a couple of hours to stop painting little portraits of Tamlin and Lucian with pig's features. Okay. That's petty. That's a little petty. But as I finished the last one, two fairy pigs wallowing in their own filth, I would call it, I smiled into the clear, bright light of my private painting room. The Tamlin I knew had returned, and it made me happy. We apologized at dinner. He even brought me a bouquet of white roses from his parents' garden, and while I dismissed them as nothing, I made certain that Alice took good care of them when I returned to my room. She gave me only a wry nod before promising to set them in my painting room. I fell asleep with a smile still on my lips. For the first time in a long, long while, I slept peacefully. Don't know if I should be pleased or worried, Alice said the next night as she slid the golden underdress over my upraised arms, then tugged it down. I smiled a bit, marveling at the intricate metallic lace that clung to my arms and torso like a second skin before falling loosely to the rug. It's just a dress, I said, lifting my arms again as she brought over the gossamer turquoise overgown. It was sheer enough to see the gleaming gold mesh beneath, and light and airy and full of movement, as if it flowed on an invisible current. Alice just chuckled to herself and guided me over to the vanity to work on my hair. I didn't have the courage to look at the mirror as she fussed over me. Does this mean you'll be wearing gowns from now on? She asked, separating sections of my hair from whatever wonders she was doing to it. For whatever wonders she was doing to it. No, I said quickly. I mean, I'll be wearing my usual clothes during the day, but I thought it might be nice to try it out, at least for tonight. I see. Good that you aren't losing your common sense entirely, then. I twisted my mouth to the side. Who taught you how to do hair like this? Her fingers stilled, then continued their work. My mother taught me and my sister, and her mother taught her before that. Have you always been at the spring court? No, she said, pinning my hair in various subtle places. No, we were originally from the summer court. That's where my kin still dwells. How'd you wind up here? Alice met my eyes in the mirror, her lips a tight line. I made a choice to come here, and my kin thought me mad, but my sister and her mate had been killed, and for her boys, she coughed as if choking on the words. I came here to do what I could. She patted my shoulder. Have a look. I dared a glimpse of my reflection. I hurried from the room before I could lose my nerve. I had to keep my hands clenched at my sides to avoid wiping my sweaty palms on the skirts of my gown as I reached the dining room, and immediately contemplated bolting upstairs and changing into a tunic and pants. But I knew they'd already heard me, or smelled me, or used whatever heightened senses they had to detect my presence. And since fleeing would only make it worse, I found it in myself to push open the double doors. Whatever discussion Tamlin and Lucian had been having stopped, and I tried not to look at their wide eyes as I strode to my usual place at the end of the table. Well, I'm late for something incredibly important, Lucian said, and before I could call him on his outright lie or beg him to stay, the fox-masked fairy vanished. I could feel the full weight of Tamlin's undivided attention on me, on every breath and movement I took. "Who is he, the police?" I studied the candelabras atop the mantel beside the table. I had nothing to say that didn't sound absurd, yet for some reason, my mouth decided to start moving. "You're so far away." I gestured to the expansive table between us. "It's like you're in another room." The quarters of the table vanished, leaving Tamlin not 2 feet away, sitting at an infinitely more intimate table. I yelped and almost tipped over in my chair. He laughed as I gaped at the small table that now stood between us. "Better?" he asked. I ignored the metallic tang of magic as I said, How did you do that? Where did it go?" He cocked his head. "Between. Think of it as a broom closet, tucked between pockets of the world." He flexed his hands and rolled his neck, as if shaking off some pain. "Does it tax you?" Sweat seemed to gleam on the strong column of his neck. He stopped flexing his hands and set them flat on the table. "Once it was easy as breathing, but now it requires concentration." Because of the blight on Prithian and the toll it had taken on him, "You could have just taken a closer seat," I said. Tamlin gave me a lazy grin. "And miss a chance to show off to a beautiful woman? Never." I smiled down at my plate. "You do look beautiful," he said quietly. "I mean it," he added, when my mouth twisted aside. "Didn't you look in the mirror?" Though his bruise still marred my neck, I had looked pretty. Feminine. I wouldn't go so far as to call myself a beauty, but I hadn't cringed. A few months here had done wonders for the awkward sharpness and angles of my face, and I dared say that some kind of light had crept into my eyes. My eyes, not my mother's eyes or Nesta's eyes. Mine. "Thank you," I said, and was grateful to avoid saying anything else as he served me and then himself. When my stomach was full to bursting, I dared to look at him. Really look at him again. Tamlin leaned back in his chair, yet his shoulders were tight, his mouth a thin line. He hadn't been called to the border in a few days, hadn't come back weary and covered in blood since before Fire Night. And yet, he grieved for that nameless summer court fairy with the hacked-off wings. With grief and burdens did he bear for whoever... What grief and burdens did he bear for whoever else had been lost in his conflict, lost to the blight or to the attacks on the borders? High Lord, a position he hadn't wanted or expected, yet he'd been forced to bear its weight as best he could. "Come," I said, rising from my chair and tugging on his hand. The calluses scraped against mine, but his fingers tightened as he looked up at me. "I have something for you." "For me?" he repeated carefully. "What, Rose?" I led him out of the dining room. When I went to drop his hand, he didn't let go. It was enough to keep me walking quickly, as if I could outrun my thundering heart or the sheer immortal presence of him at my side. I brought him down hall after hall until we got to my little painting room, and he finally released my hand as I reached for the key. Cold air bit into my skin without the warmth of his hand around mine. "I knew you'd ask..." "Ma'am, don't sing over my reading. I can't handle it. I'll get too distracted." I knew you'd ask Alice for a key, but I didn't think you'd actually locked the room," he said behind me. I gave him a narrowed glance over my shoulder as I pushed open the door. "Everyone snoops in this house. I didn't want you or Lucian coming in here until I was ready." I stepped into the darkened room and cleared my throat, a silent request for him to light the candles. It took him longer than I'd seen him need before, and I wondered if shortening the table had somehow drained him more than he'd let on. The serial had said the High Lords were power, and yet, something had to be truly, thoroughly wrong if this was all he could manage. The room gradually flared with light, and I pushed my worry aside as I stepped farther into the room. I took a deep breath and gestured to the easel and the painting I'd put there. I hoped he wouldn't notice the paintings I'd leaned against the walls. He turned in place, staring around him at the room. "I know they're strange," I said, my hands sweating again. I tucked them behind my back. "And I know they're not as good as the ones you have here, but..." I walked to the painting on the easel. It was an impression, not a lifelike rendering. "I wanted you to see this one," I said, pointing to the smear of green and gold and silver and blue. "It's for you. A gift for everything you've done." Heat flared in my cheeks, my neck, my ears, and he silently approached the painting. "It's the glen, with the pool of starlight," I said quickly. "I know what it is," he murmured, studying the paint. I backed away a step, unable to bear watching him look at it, wishing I hadn't brought him in here, blaming it on the wine I'd had at dinner, on the stupid dress. He examined the painting for a miserable eternity, then looked away, to the nearest painting leaning against the wall. My gut tightened. A hazy landscape of snow and skeletal trees, and nothing else. It looked like nothing, I suppose, to anyone but me. I opened my mouth to explain, wishing I'd turned the others away from view, but he spoke. "That was your forest, where you hunted." He came closer to the painting, gazing at the bleak, empty cold, the white and gray and brown and black. "This was your life," he clarified. I was too mortified, too stunned to reply. He walked to the next painting I'd left against the wall. Darkness and dense brown, flickers of ruby red and orange squeezing out between them. "Your cottage at night." I tried to move, to tell him to stop looking at those ones and look at the others I'd laid out, but I couldn't even breathe properly as he moved to the next painting. A tanned, sturdy male hand fisted in the hay, the pale pieces of it entwined among strands of brown coated with gold. My hair. My gut twisted. "The man you used to see in your village." He cocked his head again as he studied the picture, and a low growl slipped out. "Well, you made love." He stepped back, looking at the row of pictures. "This is the only one with any brightness." "Why are you drawing porn of yourself, girl?" "I mean, I guess do it, but whatever." Was that jealousy? It was the only escape I had. Truth. I wouldn't apologize for Isaac, not when Tamlin had just been to the Great Rite. I didn't hold that against him, but if he was going to be jealous of Isaac, Tamlin must have realized it too, for he loosed a long, controlled breath before moving to the next painting. Tall shadows of men, bright red dripping off their fists, off their wooden clubs, hovering and filling the edges of the painting as they towered over the curled figure on the floor. The blood leaking from him, the leg at a wrong angle. Tamlin swore. "You were there when they wrecked your father's leg." Someone had to beg them to stop. Tamlin threw a too knowing glance in my direction and turned to look at the rest of the paintings. There they were, all the wounds I'd slowly been leeching these few months. I'd blinked. A few months. Did my family believe that I would be forever away with this so-called dying aunt? At last, Tamlin looked at the painting of the glen and the starlight. He nodded in appreciation. But he pointed to the painting of the snow-veiled woods. "That one. I want that one." "It's cold and melancholy," I said, hiding my wince. "It doesn't suit this place at all." He went up to it, and the smile he gave me was more beautiful than any enchanted meadow or pool of stars. "I want it nonetheless," he said softly. I'd never yearned for anything more than to remove his mask and see the face beneath, to find out whether it matched how I dreamed he looked, tell me there's some way to help you, I breathed. With the masks, with whatever threat has taken so much of your power. Just tell me what I can do to help you. A human wishes to help a fairy? Don't tease me, I said. Please, just tell me. There's nothing I want you to do. Nothing you can do. Or anyone. It's my burden to bear. You don't have to, I do. What I have to face, what I endure, Feyre, you would not survive. So I'm to live here forever, in ignorance of the true scope of what's happening. If you don't want me to understand what's going on, would you rather... I swallowed hard. Rather I found someplace else to live, where I'm not a distraction? Like, yeah, okay, so this is Kitri shit. Like, okay, yeah, it sucks he has this mask on, but I don't think you're missing much by not seeing the area of skin around his eyes. True. I think you get, like, most of the scope of who this person is. Although, like, I can say, as a person who wears glasses, I look very different without my glasses on. Right? So maybe it matters. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, I don't know. And look, she managed to miss the microphone this time. Yay! Oh, my headphones are dying. No. Didn't Cal and Mai teach you anything? Only that magic makes you into a brute. He laughed, though not entirely with amusement. Then I remained silent. When I remained silent, he sighed. No, I don't want to live somewhere else. I don't want you to live somewhere else. I want you here, where I can look after you. Where I can come home and know you're safe. Painting and safe. I couldn't look away from him. I thought about sending you away at first, he murmured. Part of me still thinks I should have found somewhere else for you to live. But maybe I was selfish. Even when you made it so clear that you were more interested in ignoring the treaty or finding a way out of it. I couldn't bring myself to let you go, to find some place in Prithian where you'd be comfortable enough to not attempt to flee. Why? He picked up the small painting of the frozen forest and examined it again. I've had many lovers, he admitted. Females of noble birth, warriors, princesses. Rage hit me, low and deep in the gut at the thought of them. Rage at their titles, their undoubtedly good looks, at their closeness to him. But they never understood what it was like, what it is like, for me to care for my people, my lands. What scars are still there, what the bad days feel like. That wrathful jealousy faded away like morning dew as he smiled at my painting. This reminds me of it. Of what? I breathed. He lowered the painting, looking right at me, right into me. That I'm not alone. I didn't lock my bedroom door that night. Ooh! So that's the end of the chapter, and I think we should probably end. But that's a little sexy without being too much. Yeah, okay. But like, for real, could they just bang already? Because like, man. Anyway, we're gonna head on to chapter 23 on Sunday. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe because and yeah, right. But yeah, I think especially because like our regular streaming people that we usually are busy watching, whatever I'm trying to say, are going to be pretty much off. And she never locked it again. Yeah. I might see if people are free to like do an extra day this week or something, or this weekend. I don't know. We will see. But yeah, basically I'm just here, and hell or high water, I'll see you on Sunday. Sunday at 3. And forever after that until we're done. So thanks, Katricia and Yes Queen, for hanging out tonight. And I will see you both on Sunday. Bye.